Good day, everyone. It's a sunny day out there. I'm Buaya, your main host for today, and joined by my co-host,
Rylle, Jugueta, your co-host for today.
Welcome back to our podcast. Today's episode is going to be an interesting and educational one, especially for all thriving viewers out there. I hope you're having a good day wherever you are. If you guys are looking for a chill and fun podcast, then this is the right one for you, especially since we will have surprising games and questions later on the video.
And we're not alone in today's discussion. We have some special guests joining us, so please welcome Charlie Monteros, Elize Medina, and Madisson Macabenlar. Hi guys, how are you doing today?
I'm great.
I'm good too.
I'm fine.
That's great to hear. Hope you all get comfy because today's segment is called POV, You're Living Sustainably Through the Lens of Sustainable Practices in Communities in Cities.
By the end of this podcast, we hope to give you, our viewers, new insights and have fulfilling discussions with our guests. So, without further ado, let's dive in.
Alright, let's start with a quick question for our guest. When you hear the term sustainable cities and communities, what's the first word that comes to mind?
Green.
For me, it's innovation.
And it's balance for me.
Great answers. All of this fit into idea of sustainability in cities and communities. But let's break it down. Why is this even an issue? Why is it part of Sustainable Development Goals? For years, UNESCO has been working on the SDGs to help countries move forward toward a better future by 2030. These goals focus on solving global challenges like poverty, climate change, and inequality. Today, we are zoning in on SDG 11, Sustaining Cities and Communities. This goal is about making cities safe, healthy, and sustainable. It pushes for things like affordable housing, better public transport, cleaner environments, and protection from natural disasters. The aim? To create cities where people can live comfortably and safely. Right, Rylle?
Exactly, but the big question is, why are we still struggling to achieve this? Studies show that nearly half of the world's population still lives in urban areas with unsustainable practices. This is cited from Rylle, Samborska, and Rosser 2024. Here in the Philippines, the problem is even worse, especially in Mindanao.
That's true. In places like Davao and other urban areas in Mindanao, people struggle with rapidly expanding slums, lack of affordable housing, and poor sustainability practices.
And all of that leads to environmental degradation, which makes people's lives so much worse.
So, let's make this personal. What are some real-life problems you face because of unsustainable cities and communities?
Oh, hands down the transportation system. The government just isn't implementing proper urban planning.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree.
As a student, I'm also juggling homeworks, projects, and other responsibilities. And imagine how exhausting it is to wait hours just for a jeepney, only to get stuck in traffic for even more hours.
Right? It's such a struggle, honestly. This should be a bigger advocacy pushing the government to improve our transport system.
Exactly. If you live in the Philippines, you already know the hassle of just getting from one place to another. The government has been making efforts introducing modern jeepneys, buses, and even MRT expansions.
But urban planning still isn't keeping up. Our roads and systems aren't designed for efficient transportation.
And that brings us to an even bigger problem, which is pollution.
Oh yeah. Every time I'm stuck in traffic, I notice the thick smog around the air.
Yeah.
It's so suffocating.
It's crazy because in the Philippines, our climate is already hot, but all the smoke and pollution just makes it hotter.
I know, and it's really creating a bunch of issues for everyone.
And the worst part, we don't have enough green spaces to balance it out.
Exactly. No trees, no proper urban planning, just concrete everywhere. I can really observe that there are already multiple slums here in Davao, and the fact that there's barely any trees everywhere makes it just feel so suffocating. For example, in Hurtado by Park Maa, there are multiple trees everywhere, and the air just feels so fresh. And also, I think the government should do something about the increase of slums in the public areas.
So, the real question is, how do we fix this? For the next part, we'll talk about different approaches, solutions, and what we as individuals and as a community can do to push for change.
One way we can approach this is through Christian morality.
Oh, that's interesting. How does that connect to SDG 11 though?
Great question. Christian morality teaches us values like stewardship, justice, and compassion. When we talk about sustainability, we're also talking about taking care of God's creation.
Oh, like being caretakers of the earth?
Yeah, I think so too, because one of the key principles of Christian morality is that we are made in the image of God. This means that we are called to reflect His goodness, not just in how we treat people, but also in how we care for His creation.
We also have something called responsible freedom that God gave us free will. But with that comes the responsibility to make the right choices. If we choose greed and convenience over sustainability, we're actually misusing that freedom.
Right. Like when people say, oh, pollution isn't my problem, then complain about how hot it's getting.
Exactly. Some people believe even disasters like climate change, pollution, and or any unsustainable event happening right now are just God's test. But honestly, many of these problems are our fault. And you know, when it comes to making choices, our conscience play a huge, huge role.
Oh, that reminds me. We see a lot of leaders and corporations prioritizing money over sustainability. They know the effects of unsustainable practices and how it can further have a negative impact on the people, but they still choose profit.
That's a great example of lax conscience. It's when these people or higher ups ignore the damage just because they think it's not their problem and it doesn't affect them.
And that's where sin comes in. I heavily think that unsustainability is deeply tied to greed, corruption, and exploitation.
Right, I agree. A lot of people in power choose short-term profits over long-term sustainability. It's like they don't care about the future, just getting richer now.
So, you're saying greed is the reason sustainability is so hard to achieve?
Pretty much, it's somehow connected. Greed makes people take more than they need. And so, there is a reason why the budget for urban planning is just gone somewhere.
Oh yeah, I think it's not just in the government too, but a lot of us just allow it to happen, even when we know it's wrong. Let's say for an example, sustainable practices like proper waste management or not cutting trees. We are also a part of the problem, and we don't practice this too much.
It's like what we learn about conscience versus superego. If we follow our conscience, we act out of a genuine moral responsibility. But if we act based on the superego because of peer pressure or societal expectations, we might justify actions that contribute to unsustainability.
And that's where social sin also comes in. When individuals neglect their responsibility, it adds up. When people don't segregate waste, refuse to carpool, or ignore sustainable practices, the collective impact is massive. We become complicit in the destruction of our communities.
So, the question is now, how do we change based on the teachings of God and the Bible?
Personally, for me, it starts with forming our conscience. The Catechism teaches that conscience isn't just about knowing right from wrong. It's about shaping our character. We need to reflect, educate ourselves, and take action.
And this ties back to faith. We often hear people say disasters are God's tests, but a lot of these are actually consequences of human negligence. God gave us free will and entrusted us with His creation. So we have to take responsibility for our actions.
Exactly. If we truly believe we are made in God's image, then we should reflect His goodness in how we care for the world. Sustainability isn't just a political or environmental issue, it's a moral obligation.
And that's why we need to act now. We can't just wait for policies to change for someone else's to take the lead. Supporting green initiatives or advocating for better urban planning, every action counts.
And let's not forget the power of community. Sustainability isn't a solo mission, it's a collective effort. The Bible teaches us that to love our neighbors, and that means ensuring that the places we live are healthy, safe, and thriving.
Exactly. And as we work towards sustainability, we should also pray for wisdom and strength. Change is hard, but with faith and action, we can build better communities.
Another way we can approach this is through philosophy and asking simple questions.
Wow, I really didn't expect it to go through this way. And now, I'm excited to know how we are able to approach unsustainability through the lens of philosophy.
Yeah, you guys would be surprised on how wide and defined philosophy gives us that we are able to see the root causes on the different perspective.
Oh, I'm so excited, most especially since philosophy has been my favorite subject.
So do I. There are just a lot of whys in unsustainability. Do you guys agree?
Definitely, yes.
Since you mentioned the why, let's start with our philosophical question. Let me ask you, how can secondary reflection help us look deeper and better understand what it takes to create a truly sustainable future?
So, you guys won't get too confused. Secondary reflection is when we don't just analyze things at face value, but actually reflect deeply on their meaning and interconnectedness.
Oh.
It's different from primary reflection, where we just say, oh, the city is polluted because people litter. Yan. But secondary reflection asks deeper questions. Why do people litter? Is it because of a lack of waste management, poor urban planning, social habits, economic struggles?
Oh, so it's like people know unsustainable practices are bad, but they still refuse to do unsustainable practices like proper waste management. Instead of just saying stop unsustainable practices because it puts a lot of people in danger, secondary reflections makes us ask, why do people rely on unsustainable practices? Is it accessibility, convenience, or lack of alternatives?
This reminds me of Plato's allegory of the cave, where people only see shadows on the wall and assume that's reality. In the same way, most people only see the symptoms of urban issues, but they don't question the deeper systematic problem behind them.
And that's why deeper reflection is the key. We need to step outside the cave and see sustainability beyond just the environment. It's about creating livable, inclusive, and resilient cities where people can thrive.
And speaking of thriving, let's take this further. What if I told you that sustainability is not just an environmental issue, but a moral one too?
Wait, what do you mean?
Think about it. If you choose to live unsustainably by overusing resources, polluting, or ignoring urban problems, isn't that a moral failure as well?
Oh, definitely. Every decision we make affects others. If a company dumps toxic waste into a river, they're not just harming the environment, they're hurting communities and even animals.
This brings us to deep ecology. This philosophy says that humans are not superior to nature. We are just one part of it.
Think about how cities are built. Many urban areas destroy forests, pollute rivers, and replace green spaces with concrete. Deep ecology would say that we must build cities that respect nature, not replace it.
A great example is urban reforestation. Instead of cutting down trees to make way for buildings, sustainable cities integrate trees and parks into their design.
And green architecture, buildings that use natural energy sources, rainwater collection, and eco-friendly materials follow the deep ecology principle.
So, it's about coexisting with nature instead of destroying it?
Exactly. If we abuse nature, we destroy ourselves too.
It's the idea that we are caretakers, not owners. We don't have the right to dominate other species. We are just here to manage and protect the environment.
So in simple terms, nature can still be used but responsibly.
Yes. Imagine, you're borrowing someone else's house. You wouldn't destroy it, right? That's how environmentalism views nature.
Now, let's talk about anthropocentrism. This is the opposite of deep ecology. It says that nature exists to serve humans.
In this view, nature is valuable only because it benefits us. Forests give us wood and oxygen, rivers give us water, animals give us food and clothing.
But isn't this a bit selfish?
The issue is when we prioritize human interest at the cost of nature's destruction. If we destroy forests, pollute air and water, and overconsume resources, we're harming future generations.
So anthropocentrism without responsibility leads to climate disasters, pollution, and resource depletion.
And that's why SDG 11 exists to balance human progress with environmental protection.
After everything we've discussed, sustainability, morality, philosophy, and real-life solutions, how do you guys feel? Do you feel more enlightened, more knowledgeable? Have you started to see SDG 11 through the lens of Christian morality and philosophy?
Honestly, yes. At first, I only saw sustainability as just taking care of the environment. But now, I see it's also about our moral responsibility to create communities that are fair, just, and livable for everyone.
Same! Learning about deep ecology, environmentalism, and anthropocentrism made me realize that our relationship with nature should be based on stewardship, not dominance. Christian morality teaches us that we are here to care for creation, not exploit it.
Right? And I love how philosophy plays a big role in this. Plato's allegory of the cave made me realize that many people are still blind to the deeper issues of unsustainability. Frankel's philosophy on purpose made me think if leaders and communities truly understood their purpose, they'd make better decisions for a sustainable future. All right, to keep things fun and interactive, we're playing Never Have I Ever, Sustainability Edition. Here's how it works. I'll say a statement, and if you've done it, you put a finger down, sorry. But there's a twist. Instead of just admitting to it, you also have to suggest a solution that connects to SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. Ready?
Round 1, Waste Management. Never have I ever thrown trash on the street instead of finding a proper bin.
Okay, guilty. But I think a solution would be having more accessible and labeled trash bins around the city. Sometimes there's literally nowhere to throw your trash.
That's so true. Also, strict enforcement of anti-littering laws would help. Fines should actually be implemented, not just written on signs.
And schools should educate students on proper waste segregation so they grow up practicing responsible disposal.
Round 2, Public Transpo. Never have I ever chosen to take a car or motorcycle for a short trip instead of walking or biking.
Yeah, I've done that. But a great fix would be more pedestrian-friendly streets and bike lanes. A lot of roads in our cities are super dangerous for walking or biking.
And the government should invest in better public transportations. If buses, trains, and PUVs were efficient and comfortable, people wouldn't rely so much on private vehicles.
Another idea, carpooling programs. If more people shared rides, there'd be less traffic and less air pollution.
Yes.
Round 3, Single-use plastics. Never have I ever used plastic utensils or cups even when a reusable option was available.
Guilty, but one solution is banning single-use plastics in restaurants and fast food chains. They should only provide reusable or biodegradable options.
Also, businesses could offer discounts for customers who bring their own tumblers, utensils, and just like coffee shops do for reusable cups.
And schools and offices can have no plastic days to encourage everyone to build that habit of bringing their own reusables.
So after everything we've explored, from the philosophical depth of secondary reflection to the moral responsibility of Christian ethics to the real-world impacts of SDG 11, one thing is clear. Sustainability isn't just about environment. It's about how we see, think, and act as individuals and as a society.
Right. We started by questioning why unsustainability remains a problem despite all the awareness campaigns. And through philosophy, we realized that many people only see the surface issues: population, overpopulation, poor urban planning, but fail to reflect deeply on the root causes.
And when we look through Christian morality, we understood that sustainability is a moral responsibility. We aren't just users of the environment, we are the caretakers. We are called to serve, not dominate.
So, what's next? What do we do with all this knowledge?
We act. Sustainability starts with small choices: how we consume, how we dispose of waste, how we advocate for change. But most importantly, it starts with shifting our mindset.
And we hold our leaders accountable. Sustainable communities require ethical leadership. If we want real change, we must push for policies that reflect justice, responsibility, and long-term sustainability.
So, to everyone listening, what choices will you make today to create a more sustainable future?
Thank you to our guests for joining us this discussion, and thank you to our listeners. Let's keep this conversation going and start making real changes in our communities.